I don't see
Um,
in OBS Ninja, but it looks like it is live, so we're fine. I can't
yeah,
see you, but that's fine.
yeah. Oh, because it turned off my thing. I'll turn it back on.
Okay.
Okay, I think
All
we're
right.
good because everything's down mixed now. So, last check. How about we find out if our levels are good? Because I think everything's fine. Thank you, Snoo, for letting us know. Thank you, everyone else in the chat, for informing me of my complete incompetence here. And yeah, just gonna keep kind of chugging along here. Okay, sweet. Thank you, Snoo. Appreciate it, man. And Slap Shoto as well. So, after a bit of technical difficulties, welcome to episode 9 of the Mixup. Wow, very cool. And you may be seeing in the title of this stream as well a chat command exclamation point call. So, real quick, before we get started into kind of some of our main topics for the day, for just kind of me and Radar, chilling, talking, doing our thing. And I think the goal is, we talked about this before the show started, is because we don't have to bring on guests all the time. He and I can probably do this more regularly, and then perhaps do more call-in segments and stuff like that. But if someone types in exclamation point call to the chat, you'll get instructions on how to participate in today's call-in segment that we have planned out for the evening. So basically, the way that that will work is you'll call in to my Discord. We'll have someone in there to just mic check you, make sure everything looks okay, sounds okay, and then we'll pull you into the live chat. All we ask is that you write your question in the call-in chat, but all that's outlined in the chat command as well. So
Also
yeah,
want to
yeah,
mention, if people are not seeing the stream right now, I mean, I guess like if you can hear this, so it's in the chat, but there, I guess some people need to refresh if they're not seeing it because I'm seeing it. Looks like it's live. So, uh, tech issues be shitty, but life goes on. We, like Walt said, have a fun episode for today. We're going to be talking about Smash Summit, the Gallant Gaming summer event. We're going to be talking about commentary and Darkatma's document. We're going to be talking about content and all that kind of stuff, specifically about like being wrong. That was something that kind of got highlighted, discussions with Drugged Fox, that kind of thing. And then we're going to do the call-in segment like Walt mentioned. So Walt, do you want to kick us off in recapping some of the kind of crazy Melee events we've seen since we did an episode last?
yeah, for sure. And again, for people who are interested, just click the link in there for the Discord. If you want to be involved in our final segment for the day for the call in, we'll bring you in. Just write some questions in the call in chat as well, and we'll pull some people by the end of that, and we can get some interaction going. But this is a fully interactive show as well, guys. So feel free to type in the chat. We'll kind of converse back and forth with you throughout. But yeah, the past few weeks were really insane, and we didn't have an episode after Summit to recap Summit particularly. I guess the recap of sorts was when we did the analyst desk with Dark Gen X for GMO, where we kind of talked
Mm-hmm.
about Summit a little bit. So that was pretty insane. I have a meme queued up on my Twitter about Fox Marathon FD, ready to roll at some point. But that was just like super cool. I know for me, like I've been planning a revamp, like a season 2 of sorts to the JV5. And it's going to kind of become more of a blend of how the JV5 was kind of like top 5 plays, and I'm going to blend it more with like those top 10 lists that I did on my channel. So make it more kind of like holistic about moments instead. So that should hopefully be coming out soon. But in like writing and preparing for some of that, there were so many little cool things aside from the fact that Grand Finals was probably, in my opinion, one of, if not the best sets of all time at this point. Just considering kind of the legacy, the backstory, the competition, how close everything was, the rivalry, just everything was amazing about it. But there were also like really cute things too. Like RyoBeat tweeted out kind of the comparison of, 11 years ago,
Yeah, that
Brandon
was
was
great
casting and
actually.
said, who's going to get 70% of the $45, and then here we are, first place getting 70% of $45,000 or however much it was. I think Mango won $45,000 thereabouts. So I don't know, that I think this tournament will hold a very special place in a lot of people's hearts. So I was really impressed with it. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, no, I think the event was really like a great way to kick off kind of. I mean, I say kick off offline melee again, and then you look at the news and masks are coming back and all that stuff. So I'm hoping that that statement is correct in that we're kicking it off. At the very least, I imagine we will have events like Summit and smaller events, even if big events are an issue potentially. Who knows? But it was very good. I agree. I literally had moments where I got up out of the chair and went like, "No way!" like
Yeah.
no way. Like the FD game when he won the two FD games, I was just like, "I can't. Is this actually happening? Like, is this really happening?" Like so that that was a like really really good grand finals. I can see why people were critical of it. On the side of like Zayn was dropping stuff that's you wouldn't expect him to drop, and I get the argument of like, oh, he's under pressure and Mango's so good, but I also think there is some like, maybe he wasn't playing his best. But from a
Yeah.
spectator's point of view, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were just a lot of good storylines aside from grand finals. Uh, I was bummed that Amsa got ninth because he had a very strong path to get third at least. So that was kind of a bummer, and then him having to play Axe in losers was always sad because you don't want to see either of those guys go. Um, Plup made like an insane run. Of course, there's the whole HBox thing as well. I don't know how you feel about the recent news with online HBox, but what do you think?
Honestly, like, so so one of the things going into that event was me thinking like, I really hope HBox doesn't win, not because I dislike HBox in any way, but because it will basically validate anyone who is saying that online isn't real. I don't mind him doing well. Him getting third was cool. I just don't want it to be like, ha ha ha, like, all along he was throwing or whatever. And, shout out to Speedy Sloth in the chat for some of the discussion we had on Twitter.
Oh
But
God.
um, I do find it frustrating that for those who haven't seen HBox, a viewer pointed out that he was using a wireless headset and that would introduce some audio lag, which would make it hard to react to certain
Shoutouts to
things like
Ober, dude, the Florida homie for
yeah
unveiling that. But yeah,
yeah. So the question with that was like, is HBox, what's the word, like, is his setup actually part of the contributing to his problems in the first place? I've always felt like the reason why HBox struggles might partially be because of setup issues and stuff. I've always
mm-hmm.
felt like it was a mental thing that like, and that doesn't mean that it's made up. It means that like when he's in a venue next to a person, he's more confident. He's more like, that's where he's in his element. When he's in his room streaming or whatever, he doesn't have that same like drive, that same do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do think the ambiance is so different, and it's like especially after going to the nightclub yesterday, I was like, holy shit, dude! Like, and like I knew that it was different. Like HBox isn't wrong when he says, online and lands are two very different atmospheres and experiences. But I think it was a huge wake up call for me just to realize how different they are. Um, because even casting there, it was just like the energy was through the roof, man. Like there was just so much shit going on. Everyone was screaming. Like you have people in your ear. This is interesting for you also because I don't know how much you've casted uh, before. Like you and I kind of did a lot for online events, but I did a handful back when I was in college, and that was it. But for some of these locals, even like for the nightclub too, the commentary booth, if you will, is right next to the players. So I
Yeah.
was like, shit, they can hear me like half coaching them where I'm doing this stuff and saying like, oh, I don't think you meant to do that or whatever, you know? But there's so many different factors that come into the like online and LAN stuff. Um, and it's really interesting to me. So I don't know. I think HBox is valid for sure. I think this is the 12 frames of lag is certainly uh, a non-zero number. Um, Even yesterday too, I was talking with Cody, IBDW, and he was saying there was some type of interlacing issue on the CRT 4 Summit that was like a couple frames of audio lag. And he said like
Interesting.
I noticed it, Mango noticed it, Wizrobe noticed it, I think Zane noticed it, but I guess it's different for everyone. But like even small things like that. So yeah, if you're getting 12 frames of audio lag, you're probably fucking up some stuff.
Is that how many frames it was for HBox? 12 frames?
Yeah, it was 12. I'm pretty sure. Which is like a lot. That's like
That is
substantial.
so
It's
much.
it's
I thought it was like 5. I
No,
thought,
I'm pretty. Hang on, I'm gonna find it real quick because
okay, Wasapi Audio with uh Slippy, I think it's still 5 frames of audio lag, which is actually an insanely large amount of audio lag. Like
yeah,
it is, just it for people who don't know, because honestly, I think this isn't something that gets discussed. The reason it works this way is that faster melee, basically like TLDR plays the game like kind of faster, and because it plays it faster, that offsets for like the natural lag, and thus it becomes basically equivalent to CRT. But it's doing that for all the visual stuff. Whereas with the audio, it's not really able to do that in the same way. So any of the lag that would be built into playing with Dolphin and stuff is still there for audio. And so Wasapi can make it less laggy, but there's still going to be that like Dolphin lag. So that's something like 5 frames. And you got to think about like say, for example, as a point of reference, like Fox does a short hop back air. That's like a 7-frame
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
So if you have 5 frames of audio lag, like that's actually pretty substantial. You said it was what, 12, 13 frames,
I
something like
think they
that?
said up to 12 in the clip. I can play it real quick, and the stream will hear it.
Switch to a wire head.
It's fucking insane. That's actually
Hang on,
insane.
let's see.
I should switch to a wire headset. Bluetooth headphones add 12 frames of audio delay.
Said
Becomes impossible
Bluetooth
to hear the
headphones
Fox
add
Fox.
12 frames of audio delay. And
So-
then he just goes, "Oh, that's probably important." And then the
I've
clip
seen-
ends.
yeah. So- That's the thing is like side B has around 22 frames of startup lag, like Fox side B. So, 12 frames
Oh,
is
yeah.
like almost half the length of it.
Well, that's a good question too.
And yeah, it would
Also,
be added to the 5 frames. Yes, it would.
S'more
It would.
is right about that. So,
Yeah.
welcome also S'more, Nate Gallagher, and thank you for the sub as well, Ventus. Appreciate it, man.
Like literally that is just an insane amount of lag. Like that is like Smash Ultimate level of lag, okay? Like the kind of stuff that people complain about online, like that is so
yeah,
much
that's,
lag.
That's disgusting. Like actually,
And that's why people-
hideous.
Well, the thing is, I saw on Twitter, and I argued a bit with some people about this, not like passionately, but like some people were like, "Hey, man, I don't play with audio; it's no big deal." And I don't really play with audio cues either. Sometimes I'll listen to music. It's not really something like. Oftentimes, when I would go to locals, I couldn't even really hear the TV.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
But I think there's something very different about playing with audio that is delayed versus playing with no audio. You know what I mean? Like imagine you're dancing to a song and you can see someone clapping and it's just totally muted. You're like, okay, I'll try to sync the clap. But if the clap is like delayed, then you're like, oh fuck, I'm
Yeah.
seeing one thing, it's a different thing. Like I think that would make you worse. So
Oh no, I think it's it's definitely it's not a John at all. It's like an actual reason
it's
why
definitely
he's
something you
playing
gotta
bad.
fix.
Yeah,
Like,
so because I mean, like so much of his play style too is reactionary around the ledge. So it's kind of like, okay, rising forward airs from to just clip illusions from your space animals. That just never works anymore. So it's like, how are you gonna get away with this anymore? So that's
I also
crazy.
think it's what we were saying before, but I feel like he's always had this big mental thing going on with online. Like if you watch videos of him on IBDW's channel where they're talking about like mentality and shit, HBox will say things like, huh, just never works in online. That it's just hitting this impossible online. And Cody will be like, yo, like you gotta kind of like some of this I think isn't the online. It's just like you're feeling this way or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak for HBox or anything, but like when you have like tangible reasons to feel that way, in some situations, then you're going to start to second guess other situations. Like, if you have 17 frames of audio lag and you can't cover side B, then when you actually legitimately miss something, you're going to be like, this whole thing sucks, man. Like, I would have hit that too, even if you wouldn't have. So it's a very legitimate problem. I feel like we've already said this, but like, and it's whack as hell that he is figuring this out in
a
like
year
18
later
months
when
in.
online's
Oh my
over,
God.
basically. Like, that's so wild.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. I mean,
is wild the word that we're looking for, or
it's
or
just, I
very
think it's just
silly?
like shake my head moment. But I mean, so the thing that's crazy is that, he discovered this halfway through GMO, right? And then he won. So it's kind of like, yeah, we had like a trial and error of, okay, we had him play the tournament before the audio delay. Actually, that'd be interesting to know. Does anyone know the timeline of when Ober told HBox? Because was it before or after the Tyler Swift winner set? Because I wonder. And if it was before, and Tyler Swift beat him after getting audio buffed, Tyler Swift's like the best player in the world, far and away. I think he's amazing. And I'll die on this hill in hopes that he wins that tournament. But
he's really good. I think, I honestly think Melee is like 75% mental. Maybe that's too high, but I really do think it's like it's about like staying composed, because there's so many things that are so technical, but there's only a point where you can like practice something for so long,
right.
to the point where you're like, okay, I can hit this, but you have to like really believe you can hit it, and more importantly, you actually have to go for it in those moments where like, what if I, in HBox's case, go, like, I played Puff for a while. I remember feeling like, should I try to rest this? Oh, but what if I miss? Oh, maybe I'll go for this. And it's like, if I just rested that, I would have had this kill, etc. So if HBox doesn't have confidence in himself to be clutch, he will not be clutch in my eyes. And if you have 17 frames of audio,
yeah, dude, I have no idea. That's out of control.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess since we're kind of on the topic, let's talk about Gallant and what happened with that. Because I mean, HBox won, but like for us, we casted the first half of top 8, so I think like the big story, at least in my opinion, was Tyler Swift. And then we also had every single set that we casted in top 8 was like insanely competitive too. Like Kador and Polish for 7th was probably one of the most hype Marth Peach sets I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think Polish is literally the sickest Peach right now by a pretty wide margin. And I would also say it would be closer if BBats was at the same level, but I think BBats is not as good, but he's getting better every day. But Polish is an insanely sick player, and Kodorin I actually think is a cool player as well. So I really think that like Polish is the coolest Peach we've ever had. Like, I don't know, maybe that's a crazy statement to some, but like I whenever he plays in the chat, people are like, yo, this matchup's so good. I'm like, no, it's just the way he plays Melee is very engaging for some reason.
Yes, actually, Zet's in the chat. Polish Rishi.
Yeah,
I said this on the analyst desk that Polish Rishi was my favorite set up until Polish Kadoran and then Tyler Swift of that tournament. And you guys did a very good job in casting that as well. But that was, super cool stuff. I mean, Rishi had quite a run as well, out at 7th, but we didn't see a lot of him through the online era. So that was pretty cool to see him kind of make a comeback as well.
Yeah, no, I think it was a very well-run tournament that had a lot of very good sets. Looking at the bracket, and like obviously we commentated a decent amount of it. There were like a lot of interesting matches that stood out. I'm trying to like look at them. Obviously, Tyler Swift taking it over HBox in that first set was pretty crazy. I thought that even what's it called? Let me just find the set with Nunn and Bobby. Like Bobby Big Balls actually impressed me a lot. Although he definitely needs to change his tag, man. He had to.
That was pretty rough actually. So for those of you in chat unawares, the reason we had to say Bobby, I think we can say this at this point now. It was appearing on Canadian television. I think it's still planning on airing somewhere in there. So Bobby had to be abbreviated to that, and then there was also another player I can't recall off the top of my head that we kind of had to truncate their
Oh,
tag as
that had
well.
69 in their name.
Yeah, yeah.
It's honestly like it's one of those things where I know Zetz is in the chat saying Bobby would not change his tag. It goes against everything he stands for. But I really do think like there was a tweet a while ago that IBW retweeted that was Slime saying like your job is to sell Doritos. Like think about everything that you're gonna do and ask yourself like how does this help sell Doritos? And obviously like Slime, anything he tweets is kind of like with this sort of fun energy. But what he's saying is true is that like, okay, this is a scene that is run like every esports scene is run by sponsorships
Right.
and advertiser interest. And if your name is like Mango, cool. If your name is Big Dick Mango, sponsors go, well, I guess we'll sponsor someone else. And Bobby Big Balls is just like, it's just not a good tag if you want to get sponsored, I believe. And it's not I'm not trying to call him out, but like we saw it that we had to change his tag for a event because the sponsors of the event were not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Or in this case, the television studio.
Do we know what channel it was on? Maple Mail in chat is asking about that.
So,
I didn't know, but you're in Canada, so maybe you saw it.
So it's weird because it was on what's called Telus Optic TV, which is apparently like there's a couple of major kind of what's it called, telecommunications companies in Canada, sort of the same. You guys have the same shit, and this Telus offers like phone, internet, cable, etc. And so it sounded like this was like an online kind of like it's like some special Telus only channel service you'd get. I don't really know. I don't have cable, but even my fiance's parents who do have cable have Shaw, which is a competitor. So I don't really know what channel it was, but it wasn't on something like the CBC or something that would be like a Canadian exclusive channel. So I don't really know where it was, but it was on it's called Telus Optic TV. So if you have Telus at home, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's such a weird situation. Because I remember when they said it, like we were waiting in the call to start comms, and they were like, "Okay, make sure you call him Bobby." And I was like, "Why?" And they were like, "Just do it." And I was like, "But why?"
It was in the doc as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is the thing is like I think like we have S2J, not smoke two joints. We have PPMD, not Dr. PP. Like this is not a new thing, and anyone who kind of like, I don't think anyone's pushing back on this. Obviously, Walt's not, but I think it's like you got to be smart about this, right? Like if you want to be, pushing this, he could easily be Bobby BB or like, although that's what a fucking terrible tag that is, Bobby BB.
Isaac.
I don't know.
Testicles, man. That's what I'm saying.
Isaac Large Testicles.
Just refer
truly
to your real name.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, like. Even just like from a legitimacy standpoint, I think like there is something to be said that if you watch an event and you look at the two players' tags and one of them is like Armada or something, you're like, okay, cool, and the other guy is Bobby Big Balls, you're kind of like, what is this? Like I do think there's some.
I don't know. I mean, I think Zetz makes a really fair point though in here. Also, huge shout outs, Adam Kara, man, love to see you in the chat. I hope you're doing well, dude, because it's been a while since we've talked. But yeah, I think what Zetz is saying makes a lot of sense too, because it's like there's a lot of people in Melee that I feel like don't want to be esports, and we're kind of just in that trajectory at this point, especially with the way that productions go with online. We go back to things that are produced by Beyond the Summit, everything like that. Esports is kind of like the direction that we're already in. Like we've been esports for a while, but now we're kind of hitting like another level at this point. But not every player out there is in it for the glory of esports. They're kind of, some of them, like I assume Bobby is just kind of doing stuff to make cool clips, and that's like his MO.
He is a full-time streamer though, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure he is a full-time streamer. I'm not trying to say like, so to clarify, I'm not trying to say Bobby shouldn't like live his own life, choose his own tag,
of course.
or that he's trying to be an influencer or something. I do think there is some level of like when you are at a bigger event, like, you know, and it reflects on the entire team, you want to be accommodating to that. And to Bobby's credit, 100%, he went by Bobby at the event. He did not go by Bobby Big Balls. He did not say, no, I'm going to DQ if you don't let me use my tag. So he understands that, like, okay, if a television company says, hey, we want to keep this a little bit more PG-13 or PG, then he can keep his tag. Like, then and he was willing to kind of just be Bobby for that event. I'm just thinking that, like, you know, at the end of the day, if you're a player, you know, in a top 8 situation, it that is going to be something that plays a role. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think there's compromise. I don't think it's like a drastic situation at all. It's just kind of like it becomes weird if someone says like, hey, we need you to kind of like make this PG for the sake of the broadcast or whatever, and then someone turns around and is like, no, and then that becomes a bigger issue. But obviously, like, Bobby was okay with it, it seems like, because we did it for the entire stream and no one seemed to really care. There were a handful of people I saw in the chat that were like, oh, is Bobby the same as Bobby Big Balls? Like, that was the biggest issue I think we ran into, just in terms of player familiarity. But even then, that got resolved very quickly. So I don't think it's like a huge thing, but it's just kind of like that's maybe part of the growing pains of becoming like a esport or like a professional competition type thing, where there's some like minimum level of professionalism that is required at this point. And I think all the players and talent are already there when it comes to that. You know, people included that need to make their names PG or whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the challenge of people are suggesting that BBB is better. I don't think that's a great tag either, from a commentator friendly tag, like, or like just people, oh, it's so great to meet you, BBB. I don't know. I think as an initial, like, you know, as an initial thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I see.
It's not like
TK Anno also says like the LSD to Logan thing. That one's just honestly like a responsible decision by Logan though, because LSD is just his initials. So
it
it's
is,
just
yeah.
unlucky that it's also a drug. But I mean, like, it's very like emotionally mature of him to recognize like, hey, some people will probably see this and not know my name is like Logan S. Dunn or whatever, and then assume that like I'm promoting tripping on acid or whatever, which I'm
Yeah.
not. So yeah, I mean, there's caveats to everything when it comes to that.
No, for sure. And that's the thing is like, I do think that, like, one feeling here is that, like, talking about Melee as if like, yeah, you know, we're in a more of an esports age. Like, I feel like we've been in an esports age for like 6 years.
Yeah.
So like I'm less like sympathetic to the argument of like, oh man, you know, that's the growing pains of it becoming a more sponsor heavy, you know, higher production value thing. It's like, what we've been doing, like Smash Summits and
Right.
Evos and Genesis, and you know what I mean. So
Yeah, I don't know. I think just especially I get this feeling with the way that we're pivoting from online back to LAN though. Like, there's just this added level, and I do see a couple questions in the call-ins that kind of refer to that as well. So hopefully we'll be able to get to those towards the end of the show today. But yeah, I guess going from one very, very not controversial topic of like someone having balls in their name to one that was kind of ruffling a bit more feathers. You want to go to our next main topic that we wanted to go over today?
sure. So the next thing we wanted to cover was, there was a bit of discussion. I guess it was probably like 2 weeks ago, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't know, around that time, where specifically Darkatma, but other people like Spark were talking about, like, you know, kind of like shitting on commentators and sort of saying that Melee commentary is bad, which I actually think is totally fine to do
Sure.
if you are critical of Melee commentary. And the discussion ended up evolving into a full-on document that was posted to Reddit by Darkatma, which I can. Am I a mod in this chat? Yes, right?
I think you
which
are,
I can
yeah.
link in the chat right now. This is the document. And I mean, I guess you don't have like an auto mod thing or anything, but and this was made by Darkatma. It'll be in like the show notes or the YouTube VOD description if you guys are watching from there. And it basically sort of outlines his beliefs about like what melee commentary should look like. And I think I don't want to speak for Walt here, but like doing stuff like this is a lot better to me than being like, you guys suck, and then like you got like, you know,
Yeah.
why figure it out. Like, but that being said, there are some stuff there's some things here I don't necessarily disagree with. So I guess Walt, like, what were your thoughts kind of hearing all this and that kind of thing?
So all right. It's interesting. So I'm gonna just start off with like a pretty warm take here. So I was talking with Toph and Zoo when I was over in LA before they went to Summit, and we were talking about this whole thing too. Like, you know, and I think Toph is probably one of the higher level people to discuss this with. You know, I value his opinion highly, of course. You know, he's probably, in my opinion, kind of like the voice of Melee right now, where like he's a big name commentator, he has a following, people like go to his stream for, you know, personality and stuff, and he gets into like every event too. So, you know, he has a lot of chops to know what he's talking about when it comes to this stuff. Um, One of my takes in this situation, and I'm super interested in what you think, Radar, and also the chat, because I'm not like hard and like I'm not gonna die on this hill. Like I can be easily swayed in the other direction. But my snap reaction when it comes to commentary in esports is that more often than not, I don't think they should be as informative or like viewer friendly, if that makes sense. And the way that I tried to describe this to Toph and Zoo is when you watch traditional sports, no one in a basketball game or a hockey game says, you know, like goes back and goes, oh, and by the way, for the viewers at home who have never watched fucking hockey in your life, icing is when you slap the puck from zone 1 to zone 3, blah 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 blah. Or like for the viewers at home who have never touched grass in their life and played basketball, a double dribble is when you dribble twice or you travel and you pick up the ball without dribbling. Like casters brush over that because there's kind of the half expectation when you watch those events, especially on live television, that the viewers are at least somewhat informed when it comes to where they're going in that direction. But there's plenty of times where you can watch the Super Bowl and then your friends are like, "Oh my god, like I literally don't know anything about football. Like this is so weird. Go Patriots. I love Tom Brady." You know, and it's like that like happens more often than not, but I don't necessarily think that's a net bad thing. I don't think this is like a critical issue either. Like I'm just kind of interested in opening discussion on that front because there's value in kind of bringing information to like brand new people who happen across a stream. Of course, like that's just the marketing funnel as a whole. But to do it every single time under the assumption that there is going to be like one new person in every stream, I think is kind of short-sighted a little bit, and maybe, you know, casting as a whole might be a little bit knocked down as a result, because it's kind of like you're spending time that you could be like developing casting as a whole to just like baby someone and like coddle them into thinking like they don't know anything, so I'm going to make sure they know it.
So, two things. First, it is worth mentioning that what Walt is talking about was almost like a side but equally relevant topic that Toph brought up about like, should we be commentating to be more accessible to new players? Whereas Darkatma's criticism was more like broad. I'm not trying to be
like yeah, fundamentally not okay with casting, or like just like constructive criticism about people who do commentary. I get that.
Exactly. And I think the reason why I want to bring that up is that I actually think these are two very different problems. So I believe Darkatma is describing what he wants from commentary, and what makes his perspective unique is partially his deep, deep knowledge of the game.
Yep.
And then we're also talking about a different topic, which is how and like how should we be weighing the new player experience or the lower level experience for commentary? So to answer, like to give my thoughts on what you were initially saying about like sports don't establish stuff, I do think that like some people have already brought up in the chat that it depends on like the event.
The event,
And
yeah.
I think we like that sort of should go without saying. Not that it. I mean, people might not know, but like if we were commentating Evo and we were thinking ahead of time, like okay, people are going to be seeing Melee for the first time. They might not know what like DI is.
Right.
It can be useful to do that, but in terms of just general stuff, I do think the comparison to sports is a little tricky, but just because like I'm trying to think of like the newest game on TV that's the sport, and like you know like what's the newest game that's like a major sport? Is
Well,
it like
I mean, like even think about like Fortnite, dude. Like when people are building like and having just strokes on their computer screens with just all of these materials going flying everywhere and people swapping weapons really fast. I mean, you take that game and then you multiply it by 1,000 and you have the pace that is Melee. It's like a lot of these things are really hard to do, and I think that there was a thread that I think I just saw it today. It was from Seth Loves to Talk, really cool guy on Twitter and with a YouTube channel as well. But he had actually shared an image or a video clip from the sailing Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna pull this up right now and see. But he said like this does an incredible job at basically providing every piece of information that an audience member would need to be conveyed to them without basically cluttering your viewing experience and or like doing any form of over explaining, where it's just kind of like call out tags of like distance, who's on what team, what place are they in, whatever. Like all of this stuff makes sense, and these are all things that could be really relevant. And I saw that he tagged people like JDMH in that as well, just kind of like the relevant folks when it comes to Smash. But things like that I think are pretty unique solutions that we probably haven't explored as much, because the issue, at least when it comes to documents like Darkatma and folks had provided, starts with the people as opposed to the technology.
Yeah, I think it this is one of those topics where there's a lot of different angles that you could go down, and I'm seeing the chat and I'm seeing people talk about stuff. So why don't we first talk about, I really do think there's two distinct topics here. How should we be positioning commentary on average? Like what should commentary look like, and how should we be considerate of like top level players and new players and that kind of thing? And then the second conversation is like sort of related, which is more relevant to the Darkatma stuff of like what makes commentary good or bad and what a lot of people do right or wrong.
Right.
If we start with that first, my big issue with the document, and I actually did a stream on my YouTube channel talking about this, and it does tie into what Zetz was saying a bit in chat, is oftentimes pro players, and also ties into our topic after this about content and being wrong and stuff, is oftentimes pro players will weigh in on commentary, and obviously pro players have a lot of insight, and they correctly, I think, identify that saying something that's truly wrong can be off-putting, and it's also like not a good thing because it might kind of push a false narrative, and so it's important to be like mindful of what you are talking about. But at the same time, I feel like when pro players talk about commentary, calling back to our conversation with Aiden a couple episodes ago, where he was like, the average viewer is not like those players. And so when they say like what they like or don't like, on some level, it's like, okay, but you have a very, very specific knowledge set and like understanding of the game. And the thing that I really wanted to highlight, without monologuing too much here, is Darkatma specifically called out play-by-play commentary as something that he thinks is kind of inherently like lazy. And he did elaborate a bit. But are you reacting to what I'm saying? Or?
Yes, because I didn't see that part of the document. What the fuck?
Yes. So he basically he did like elaborate a bit, and he tried to say like, look, like if it is like adding something insightful or if it is interesting or whatever, it's useful. But his main argument against play-by-play commentary kind of goes like this. And again, the document is linked. I can link it again, or Walt can link it again.
Yeah, I'll do
But it
that.
basically goes like this. Melee is a very, very fast game. When you do play-by-play commentary, you'll never really be able to like keep up with what's going on, and it's not really going to add that much. So like it doesn't really need to be in there unless it's adding something like insightful and stuff. It doesn't help to just say like hits him with a knee, and another knee, like or more importantly, like his example was more like goes for the edge cancel forward air into the second forward air, F smash. Like you can't cover it all, so don't try to do it. And he said kind of people rely on it too much. Now I know, Walt, you want to say something about play-by-play commentary. I want to say something too. So go ahead first. Let's see what you're thinking, because
I think that I mean, even like, so I posted a clip today of the JoJo versus the Warmer set, and that was like very much play-by-play casting, in my opinion. I do agree that I think play-by-play in Melee is incredibly hard to do, but it's not impossible. Like, that's what I've been practicing a lot, I think, more so, especially when you and I cast together. But just kind of approaching it with the more like shoutcasty style that you see kind of like the MOBA genres do, like the big esports that have tens of thousands of viewers every single day for their regular seasons, right? Like Overwatch, League, whatever it is. With that in mind, like I think that, and I've said this multiple times before too, where traditional sports and maybe some other esports perhaps that I'm not as familiar with, so someone in chat can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but traditional sports at the very least tend to have kind of hard and fast roles when it comes to play-by-play and analysts as casters. Melee, in my opinion, is a bit more fluid, where I mean, this is my opinion, Radar, but I think with you and me, it's maybe like I lean 60% play-by-play and 40% analysis, and maybe you're 60% analysis and 40% play-by-play. But that's not a set number. That's always fluctuating depending on what's going on in the game state, who the players are, what the narrative might be. So that's what makes casting in Melee really interesting to me, because the pace is incredibly fast, so it makes just doing like one role really, really hard. But it allows you to kind of dive into the toolkit of some of these other points that Darkatma might be bringing up in what makes good commentary in this document.
So yeah, I definitely agree. I think one thing that like I really pushed back on in the stream that I did was I know you're going to agree with me on this. I do not think so. Like it's basically pushing on his exact point and flipping it. So he's saying there's too much going on in Melee to try and catch up and do a play-by-play. My feeling is that when you are a pro player, you watch it, you're able to take in all of this information that's happening. Most players who watch Melee aren't actually seeing a lot of the stuff that we're describing. And so sometimes it is valuable to say, like, gets the Amsa tech and does the whatever. Like Amsa tech's probably a bad example because it's so visual, but like gets the slide off on the platform, allowing him to escape the combo, but he's still going, like hits him with the knee, whatever, and that kind of stuff. It sounds like it's play-by-play because it is, but it's also saying like, here is what you're seeing. And if you're just a person who's played Smash casually, or even if you've played at like a competitive level, but you don't really have like a deep understanding, it is often highlighting stuff that went really, really fast. And in the stream that I had, I actually like played clips of our commentary of times I remember where like I would try to highlight something really quickly while also just saying what was happening. And I would ask the chat like, hey, did you notice that this person, did a platform slide off here, or that they like fast fell to the ledge there, and that they were able to like not fall off, and that was this defensive thing they would do? And the answer was almost always no, I did not. Mm-hmm. And yet for Darkatma, it's like good STI on the shine there. He prevented Mango from getting a follow-up. But most people don't even know what STI like, or like they don't know that just happened, because a lot of things are very subtle in Melee. So I think play-by-play really actually does highlight like stuff that might not be as obvious on top of all the other merits for it of just like there is value in saying stomp knee like at the right times, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I don't know. I think this actually makes a lot of sense and has a lot of tie-ins to the other topic that we have in mind too. So I feel like we're kind of pulling from similar threads when it comes to that, because this is kind of a topic of subjectivity being brought into quote unquote like objective points, which to me just doesn't make a lot of sense, because at the end of the day it's preference, right? Like someone, even if you're the best play-by-play caster for Melee that the world has ever seen, there's going to be people out there who just don't like play-by-play. That's just how it is, you know? You still are kind of at the mercy of one, the audience, most importantly, but two, I think from one of the points earlier in chat that someone brought up is the vibe of the event matters a lot, you know? Doing really like high energy, fast paced play by play maybe doesn't make as much sense for a summit couch, for instance, where the vibe might be a bit more casual when you're in day one pools and it's more conversational for it. And it's kind of like, it's almost the same as like when you do stand up, where it's like, okay, know your audience. Like, you don't want to crack a joke that's, you know, in bad taste in present company, right? Like, if you know the people that you're going to be performing for. I kind of see it as like, for me, the anecdote that I have is, you know, obviously you and I have been doing a lot of casting together. I did an event a few months back for Uncle Sam's Maple Syrup. It was a, I believe, Canadian online event as well. That event was completely different from anything you and I have ever done before. It was the most casual of the most casual. We were drinking, we were cracking jokes, we weren't even talking about the set at some points. Like, it was just basically having a conversation with the other casters, and we were just having a ball. But by that same virtue, I had friends who tuned into that stream who said that was probably one of the most entertaining streams I've ever seen, because and it might be twofold. It might be because they were just entertained by the style of the casting, but it might also be because they know what, you know, like your or my traditional style, quote unquote, is, and we're doing something like kind of outside of that bubble, but being relatively successful in that.
Yeah, no, I do think there's definitely going to be like event to event, there's going to be a different vibe. And I think like, I'm sure both of us think like if we ever do, you know, when we do a summit, we'll have to adjust to like a different kind of uh, atmosphere. And I think it is important to do that. I can think of so many times where people will be like, talk about the fucking game, Scar. And it's like, okay, but you have to understand that like, especially for summit events, like they go on so long that I feel like what the commentators try to do there, besides just creating like a casual, fun vibe, is like talk about like start to build larger narratives rather than just like, ooh, he did a forward air there. Ooh, beautiful combo. Just because like if you do that for 8 hours, it just starts to get dry really quickly.
Yeah.
And yet you always get people who push back on it and go like even they'll go like, oh my god, they didn't notice that he did like a moonwalk down air and they just like didn't talk about it at all. Ugh, terrible commentary. And it's like, okay, there's always going to be something that you could be talking about at any given moment, and you really want to be like prioritizing what fits the vibe. And also like there's so many things that I'm essentially trying to articulate, like soft skills of commentators, like setting up your co-commentator,
Yep.
like yeah, trying to build a narrative, trying to keep hype, sort of fit a vibe, but whatever it is, like. And I don't know, when people talk about this kind of stuff in a critical way, it often feels like they miss this kind of shit. Plus, like the people who push back are often not commentators themselves, and you know
Yeah. Fucking
that's the tricky
try
thing.
it one time. Fucking nerds. Jesus. Like,
Like
oh, that
I
makes me
I
so
honestly,
mad, actually. Like, when someone's
I
like, oh, I can see what's going on, bro. Like, why do you need to do a play by play? It's like, get on this fucking microphone and talk about what's happening in the game, frame for frame, and tell me that you're not having a hard time keeping up with it. And yes, like, to Zet's points earlier, I know he said something to the effect of, if you are very good at doing play-by-play, you can certainly keep up. Yes, I agree, but I don't think that makes it easy at all. I think that makes it's still an incredibly hard thing to do just based on the pacing of the game, especially if you're going to make your casting going, oh, okay, dash attack into the shine, back air into edge guard, double laser from the ledge, unsafe, blah blah blah. Like, like I do that plenty of times in my own casting as well. You can look at the clip that I posted on Twitter today. I think I do that, but I build in a lot of dead air, and that was intentional to kind of pass off to a caster, whereas when I work with radar, I think we're kind of in sync and kind of understanding of when that space comes through. We know when to keep dead air, and then we also know when that indicates a pass off to the other caster. But it's also because I can't keep talking like that fast and keep up with the state of the game without eventually fumbling over words and kind of making a mistake at one point. So I don't know. It's not easy. And to the people that are like, I can see that he grabbed the ledge and got edge guarded. Get a life, you fucking losers. Come on, like.
Yeah, it is a fickle thing. It's tricky. Whenever you hear someone criticizing stuff that they don't do, I don't know. And like it goes both ways, right? Like even when we get praise from top level players, like, Ginger has notably said that we are good on multiple occasions, and big shout outs to Ginger. It's really nice to be respected by your peers and acknowledged by your peers. At the same time, when I get comments like that, I also think, got to make sure that I'm not just pleasing the Gingers of the world and also pleasing the guy who just kind of watches Melee casually. And I think we do try to do a good job of both. But like, yeah, it is like it is a tough thing. So I think, should we move on to the next topic? To try to
so I the way that I want to put a bow on this, in my opinion, and I'm always down to talk more about this with any of you guys. So feel free to hit my DMs, or we can bring it up in another episode if we ever want to. Because like for me, I've done casting when I was back in college too, and I really enjoyed it. And then now that I kind of have the channel, I wanted to tie those two aspects of enjoying the game together. But I think when it comes to kind of like a wrap up for this, if you, in my opinion, if you feel that you are doing a good job at something that you are doing, then you're doing a good fucking job at it. That's just the end of the story. Don't let like these stupid idiots in YouTube comments and fucking Reddit threads tell you that, oh, like you don't know what you're doing. Like you need to practice this, that, and the other thing. Because none of these people know what they're talking about. The best person to kind of have a gauge on who's doing well and, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and where you need improvement is yourself. It's not any of these stupid keyboard idiots on Reddit that's going to like explain to you that the reason play-by-play casting is bad is because obviously all of us have eyeballs. Like, do what makes you happy and just work on improvement, and people will notice it eventually. And then you just keep going, and then it's just positive feedback loop, and just don't give up. That's basically the moral of the story. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's move on.
Worth mentioning, and I'm sure Walt, with his hot statements, would still agree, there was a lot of good stuff in Darkatma's document. There was a lot of stuff that was like, and I think it is important to take constructive criticism. That's not what Walt is saying. He's saying like, be like your taste should guide things, and trust in your own instincts. Of course, if everyone's saying stuff is shit and you go, I think it's good, questionable, but like don't let some kind of
you can evaluate. There's
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, but yes,
no, for sure.
I think his document is very probably the most well written explanation of again his subjective opinion of what makes good or bad commentary, and where he as a commentary enjoyer would see improvement. This document is different for every single person that writes it out there. But
I just love
there's nothing wrong with that.
Enjoyer.
Yeah.
Me, commentary enjoyer.
Word listener. So.
Yeah, certified. Yeah. So with that,
I'm gonna get even more mad, dude.
A very related topic, because this happens with both content, and it does definitely happen with commentary, is our next topic, which, I mean, I'm gonna call being being wrong about Smash related stuff. That's an insanely long title. You're wrong about Melee and you're a content creator in some way, or you're a commentator and you just made an error. What happens? Well, usually people online or in the chat or pro players in Twitter afterwards will be very, very critical of making mistakes. And I think it presents an interesting conversation that I know Walt has a lot of thoughts about around like navigating the balance between pushing back on misinformation and making sure we say the right things and what's the word? I'm totally losing my train. Pushing back on people who say the right things and also not just like shitting on people too hard and not pushing people out of the space for making a mistake. So once again, Walt, kick us off here. Kind of, you hinted on Twitter that there were a lot of rage,
I'm
a lot
gonna.
of pent up hot takes.
I've reeled it in since then because it's I kind of have done some reflecting and talking with some friends about their thoughts on it too. For those unacquainted, here's the video that kind of caused a bunch of weird discussion. And again, full disclaimer for whoever is gonna clip this and put me completely out of context and make me look like this demonic human being, but I love Sammy. I think Sammy is an incredible human being. I actually commentated with him years ago when I lived in South Carolina. I doubt he even remembers that. But I think he's a great person. I think he's obviously an incredible player, and he clearly knows what he's talking about when it comes to the game, much more so than me, in my opinion. The thing that gets challenging is, as I try to pull up the initial tweet on this as well, but it's... I think he presented it in a way that was not aggressive, certainly. He says, like, it's not a gotcha moment. I'm not trying to shit on this person. I get that. And I know that's his intent, 100%. But in terms of the cause and effect of everything, whether or not he intended to be, to dunk on Darwin's video or not, doesn't really matter as much because it's kind of like a trickle down, in my opinion. Where, yes, Sammy meant well completely. Everything came from a very constructive lens, and I understand that, and I respect it, especially as someone who has kind of been pelted by these levels of critique and much, much worse over the many, many years I've made content in the Melee scene. The problem is when people trickle down and then they just take whatever this person says as gospel and then turn around and quote retweet or respond to or write a reply to Drug Fox's tweet and says, oh man, like, this is insane how I'm not even good at Melee and I just saw how completely wrong this video was. And it's like, yes, fine, there was something that was incorrect in the lens of Drug Fox. But the other thing that gets me a little more mad is you can't objectively define perceived risk. So, like, if the issue in question was, okay, this moment that Darwin pointed out as the core concept of his video is Mango did a thing that Darwin perceived as quite risky, but Drug Fox, a top 10 player in the world and probably one of the best coaches in Melee, says it's not risky. The droves of people on the internet will sooner follow Drug Fox and say, okay, Darwin Ding, whoever that is wrong, because he's just a random YouTuber, and Sammy, really good Melee player and guy who I have parasocial relationships with, is right because he presses buttons good. And that fundamentally doesn't sit right with me. Like, there shouldn't be that, like, the whole point of me making a channel, like, for me, and I don't know if this is how you felt about this, Radar, but I had replied to this in a thread with Ryobeat, and I'm sure we'll get to that as well, was I wanted to show that you don't have to be good at Melee to be able to speak intelligently about it. But this whole idea of perceived risk is just that. It's perceived risk. It is entirely subjective. There's no, you can't be purely objective about this because there are so many different factors that go into this thing where if Drugged Fox is able to do this 100% of the time, that's great. Maybe it's not risky, But the caveat is maybe it's not risky for drugged Fox. It might be risky for Mango, who's competing for $45,000 right there on the line in person in the first in-person major in over a year since we had a pandemic. It's different for everybody, and that's the part that really kind of like made things muddy for me in kind of figuring out a proper avenue for arguing this.
I
I'm
see
done.
that. No, it's okay. Like, I think, one of the challenges with talking about stuff like this is like you need some time to kind of really articulate what you're saying and not have people kind of misinterpret it. Otherwise, we're feeding into the exact same stuff that we'd be critical of. I do think, as someone, like, when I watched that clip, I did think, I don't personally perceive that as a huge risk, and I do understand why people would push back on the idea that, like, that, making a sort of enthusiastic video essay about why this one thing is this way, and then feeling like, I don't know, but I don't think it's that way. I can see why that became a point of discussion. What was interesting about it was that it felt like different people were weighing in on it in different ways, of like, oh, I don't know, I might find this hard. Like, it was a kind of specific situation that, like, because so I'll give like my thoughts about what, as someone who plays a Spacey and like has been labbing that matchup in particular, not Fox Marth but Falca Marth, and that specific mix up comes up a lot, where like Marth has his jump or his side B, one of, if not both of them, and he can sort of stall off stage, and you have to know whether to like refresh your invincibility and risk getting hit, or like stay a little bit vulnerable for a bit longer just to call that out. In my experience, it is risky. It's what threw me off was like, it's a very, very common thing that happens in the matchup.
Yep.
Like, you just kind of have to be like, okay, I'm going to try to time this the best I can to sort of say that I think he's going to side B. And like, sometimes there's timings where you can just cover everything. Sometimes you can't. Like, it really depends on the situation. But I can see why Darwin Ding like viewed it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. It's tricky. I think what can kind of be a bad thing is starting to sort of dogpile on a single person who's just trying to make a video and like talk about what they find interesting.
Exactly.
On the flip side, I see why you don't want people going, oh my God, that's the classic Mango, wait at the ledge and call him out and risk, you know what I mean? When it's like, whoa, okay, everyone has to do this. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't want to have someone do a stomp knee and then go, that's their signature S2J punish or whatever. Like, I'm using more obvious examples of like,
I guess the question is like, is it that intrinsically damaging to do that? Like, the fate of the community doesn't lie in the balance for someone to say like, oh, Mango always goes for that risky ledge grab, man. Like, is that really a net negative, so much so for the community that we need to even be having a discussion like this about it?
I actually think you're right. It isn't. I think where things get tricky, and speaking as someone who has made videos that have mistakes as well, and people have pointed out those mistakes, and my videos in particular are really trying to tell you like, here's what you should be doing in X situation, or here's how you should view this thing. I think there can be damage of like, hey guys, like in this situation, you could probably CC. Like, I had a video that I did a fuck ton of research on years ago about like crouch canceling get up attacks, and I did all this testing and stuff. And during my testing, like where I was genuinely trying to figure it out, for some reason, like whenever I did it with Luigi, I guess I'm just not used to playing him, I couldn't follow up on the CC get up attack. But then I later learned, so I said like, unfortunately, because of like Luigi's low traction and Ice Climber's low traction, like you can't really do this. And then as soon as I uploaded it, people were like, no, you definitely can. And I was like, oh fuck, like now I have a video here saying you can't do something and you definitely can. And people are going to watch it and go like, oh fuck. Like, so I do think there are moments where like it is bad, but then in this situation, like Walt is saying, it probably isn't that bad. It probably is good to have discussion around the game in general. So, and then most importantly, like people just love to kind of shit on people for being wrong. And I think like what I struggled with Drug Fox in that specific clip is where I think Drug Fox misses out on stuff is that he's been a high level player for so long that his response was like, well, I get frustrated that people don't just like go out and test this stuff. And I, now that I've been playing for a really long time and specifically making content, I know how to test this stuff. I know like what you're supposed to be doing, but I did not always know that. And like,
Yeah.
when I did that video, like I didn't really know how to like go frame by frame at the time. So I just like tried to do it and couldn't really get the option done. I was like, okay, well, I guess it's not doable. So like I think the thing that a lot of pro players don't realize is like to them, the getting from A to B, like where you have a question and you get the answer, is like, oh well, just do this. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. And so
Sure.
the reason a lot of misinformation gets out there, some of it is because people aren't thorough, and I do think we need to be thorough. But some of it is just like you just don't know the way to actually like figure it out.
Yeah.
So, and until you do, you have the possibility of getting stuff wrong.
As another disclaimer as well, I think all of us would be like very happy to have like Sammy on for something like this and discuss this stuff. I think we've kind of like settled the dust on this and everything seems to be pretty fine for the most part. I just want to make it clear, like Sammy said, you know, he's open to talk about this whenever, and we're always open to talk about it as well. So whenever, if that ever comes up, then we will, and I'm sure it will be a very civilized discussion when it comes to that sort of thing. But to be a little less civilized here, Too Many Falcos in the chat says it feels like people ever rarely celebrate Melee content. And I just want to say, re-fucking tweet, man, because that's the thing that really, I think, at its core, kind of bothers me about some of this stuff, is people feel the need to be so hypercritical when it comes to these things over just saying, hey, good job. And the moral of that story is, I don't want people and creators to be like coddled and feel like they should have all negative thoughts completely censored from their comment section. But by the same virtue, it's like you shouldn't have to be like go through the trials and tribulations of becoming a fucking Smash Bros creator by just constantly getting shit on by people who either A, don't know what they're talking about, or B, try to just push you into quitting. It's like that's ridiculous to me. And I do feel like, to the comment of Too Many Falcos, nowadays people do celebrate Melee content a lot, and I think that's incredible and I love it. I think part of that is attributed to the fact that the core group of like quote unquote, again, Melee creators that are out there are much more intertwined at this point, and we're all familiar with each other. It's not like we're competing with each other and everyone is cutthroat and we hate each other. It's like, no, we're all trying to make stuff for the same 20-year-old dead game and keep this thing alive and keep this thing running for as long as we can. And people are recognizing that now. But the idea of like doing something like this, and when it comes to Darwin's video, kind of circling back to that one, I had messaged him after, and I don't think this was kind of his mental, but I just wanted to make sure, just basically being like, hey, like, I hope you're not discouraged as a result of this, because like, first off, you should ride the gravy train on this, because you're getting a shitload of views off of all of this discussion that you're getting, and you're going to get a lot of exposure, which is amazing. That's never a bad thing. But I hope you're not discouraged that people are coming at you being like, okay, this is a fundamentally wrong video, because one, it's not. Two, to the comment of Run Riot, I disagree with Run Riot's last comment saying risk can certainly be non-subjective, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. But risk assessment as a whole is entirely subjective.
No, they're saying that it is
subjective.
subjective.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah,
I'm heated up right now. The oven's preheated, so. But yeah, like I had checked in with him and said, I hope you're doing okay. Like, you know, hopefully you're not discouraged, because like the hardest thing, and I think when all this happened, the reason that I kind of had like the visceral reaction that I did was because when I had started my channel, and I'm sure this was similar for you too, Radar, like back in 2016 when I was making videos, even when they were combo videos, people would be like, well, this is dumb. And it's like, okay, I'm not that sensitive where I'm gonna go like cry into my pillow over some like 14-year-old telling me that my Falco montage is stupid. But like, come on, like what is the point? What value does that do comments like that add to the ecosystem of Melee? Like when the game, especially back then, was like not as good as it is right now. It's like just let creators do their thing, and if they're wrong about something or if you don't agree with something, then bring it up in a constructive way. Let's talk about it. Most of these people are like very willing to have conversations when it comes to this sort of thing because all of us are improvement driven and growth oriented mindsets. I feel like when in the grand scheme of these creators out here.
Definitely. I think one thing that I also spoke about that Darwin liked and stuff, and it's something I think for people who are creating things, what I learned really was just like, I don't want to say stay in your lane because that doesn't fit it well. Like it's like that almost sounds like don't experiment. But there's a reason why when I do videos often now, I'll do a lot of like Falco and Puff content or even like a Marth video or something where I'm like very sure I know stuff about what I'm talking about. And if I'm at all like hazy about something and there isn't an obvious way to test it, I'll say stuff like this is a really good option among the many options that he can do, or like this is something I believe is like, there's ways to discuss this stuff without like,
Speaking in
the,
absolutes, I think, is kind of
or even just like, like the get up attack video that I did, like I felt like, okay, I've covered some stuff for Fox and Falco and that kind of thing. I guess I should do some stuff about Captain Falcon because he's a common character. And that ended up costing me because like I didn't know Captain Falcon as well as I, maybe do now, or I still don't know him as well as I do Falco.
mm-hmm.
And so like now you won't see me do those same things where like I'd love to do a video on Yoshi or something, but like I don't know Yoshi. So, and sometimes it's funny because people be like, where's my Pikachu video, man? And I'll be like, I mean, again, maybe I'll get Tyler Swift on an episode or something. And that is something I'd love to do in the future. But so I think there is also a way to like cover your own ass about it and be more confident in what you're doing. But yeah, and I also do want to echo what you said before about like Drug Fox is generally a positive force in this stuff. I personally have reached out to Drug Fox on a number of occasions asking specific questions. And on the flip side, Drug Fox has been wrong about some stuff. Like there are, things I can think of in his own clips where he'll be like, oh, this thing is this way. And I'll think, oh, actually, that's not true. So even like the thing that's actually really funny about when people are wrong is because there are only, say, 500 people in the world that actually know a lot about Melee. If you do get something wrong, like only those 499 people can call you out.
Shouldn't be like you should that feels like hedging, dude. You can't be like, oh well, at least
No, I'm not saying that that's how you should structure it. I'm more saying it's like I'm more saying that so when people like Ginger or someone who's very knowledgeable actually probably does get stuff wrong or it's straight up just like wrong, but no one calls them out on it. Whereas something like this that's a bit more subjective, a bit, then everyone's jumping on them. But like what I'm trying to say is not like, oh, hedge your bets or whatever. I'm more just saying like, hey, we all make mistakes. We're just not necessarily catching some of the mistakes that these guys are doing.
Yeah.
Or, they're not even aware of whether they're wrong or not. And even if they are wrong, like whatever. Like, so I don't know. I think my messaging is getting a bit mixed here, Walt, but like, I'm just trying to say, I agree that Drug Fox wasn't trying to do anything. And he personally has helped me a lot when I'll be like, and actually Ginger too, I'll sometimes message Ginger about Falco stuff and be like, I'm trying to articulate this thing, but I want to make sure that you agree with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I do actually think you can do that, like with certain people. Certainly you could do it with me if you guys have questions about like Falco stuff.
Yeah, I think someone in the sea of those threads made that point and said, like, yes, the like communication is the biggest thing here, right? Like a lot when you get to that level, a lot of people, players and minds alike are very willing to share information and kind of go through the process with you and slog through whatever it is that you're trying to have answered, these burning questions in your mind. Yeah, that's great. I know Ventus in chat had mentioned Ryobeat's thread. I think he does a very good job at kind of summarizing what people are feeling in this situation. I think the big takeaway as well for me, and this is something directly from my DMs with Darwin, is he said, you know, I'll paraphrase, so I'm not exactly reading from DMs because I don't want to invade his privacy like that. But he said something to the tune of, you know, it's interesting to see like now that there are people watching, and that puts like another level of attention to detail that he needs to put on everything. I think that's kind of like a yes and no, because for me, and I think this is a point that we've kind of rung along the span of this discussion piece, is I think it's really okay to be wrong, you know, because being wrong is part of the learning process. It's just being wrong shouldn't be a death sentence to whatever you want to be pursuing in, you know, YouTube or whatever, you know, TikTok, whatever platform you're kind of mobilizing there. Like, you can be wrong and you can learn from it, and that's fine. But the idea of like increasing your attention to detail because you know people are going to scrutinize you, that feels like really rough on like mental to me, to do something like that.
Yeah, I think there's really like, I'm torn because I think there's a really good argument on either side of like, I had people ask me the other day, or someone commented on one of my YouTube videos asking like, what do you think your qualifications should be to be a
Yeah, there
creator or
shouldn't
something?
be. There shouldn't be.
And
That's
I
the
was like,
point.
bro, like you definitely like just do stuff. That, like, you know, the only way you can get better is by doing things. And you will not meet a person who makes content that didn't make mistakes along the way,
Right.
or, you know, doesn't improve and everything. But at the same time, I have met other people who are like, I really, really want to be a commentator. I really, really want to do like content or whatever, or I want to make guides about this. And when you talk with them, you're like, you don't actually like know that much about the game. I think you got to first focus on like building some kind of foundation of stuff. I think where things
Yeah.
get kind of tricky is it's like, what kind of content are you making? I think there's a lot of room for content in Melee that doesn't really have to do with like how many frames there are in, you know, this thing, or some really technical, or like what is Falco supposed to do in this situation. A lot of the content that Walt makes, you know, is content that's more about narrative and storylines and stuff. And, you know, the idea of even people like giving feedback and being like, you're wrong, Mango got this, it's like, well, what the fuck, this is all like not subjective, but it's like, it's more qualitative in the first place. It's more about like writing and stuff. So I like the idea of a commentator who knows
Okay,
nothing more.
I'm gonna say this now because Jaden has kind of forced my hand. I've been planning a piece where I'll do a bit of giving like one of my friends who has never watched Melee in their life a sheet of Melee terms, but none of them have any definitions on them. So it'll just say like wave dash, L cancel, slide off, whatever. And then I'm just gonna hand them a set and tell them to cast it. And I think I'm gonna do that on a live stream at some point. So yes, Jaden, to your comment, I agree with you entirely. Also, thank you for the sub earlier. I didn't get to mention that, so I appreciate that a lot as well. But the other thing that this comment makes me want to talk about is I I had messaged this to you before GMO. I wasn't intending on doing it, but my God, I think it would have been hilarious just as a test to see what people as viewers truly understand. So for all the viewers at home, I had messaged Radar before GMO had started, and I was like, after this whole discussion about like being wrong in Melee came up, and I was like, part of me wants to do a commentary block at GMO or some type of similar event where I intentionally throw and get every single piece of like anecdotal or like gameplay specific evidence completely wrong, and see, one, how many people in chat actually notice it, and two, what like the reaction would be to it. Because it's like, okay, yeah, like most of the people in chat would probably be like, yeah, you're wrong about this, but there gets to a point, right? But I just thought that it would be fucking hilarious, first off. But I didn't want to damage the integrity of an event like GMO by doing that.
I do think worth mentioning, by the way, that like there is a point where you have credibility and people will believe what you say. Like one of the things that and that makes it easier too is you're getting less scrutiny just because of who you are. If Toph says something like hey, Martha's really good at this, people are less likely to go like, well, Toph doesn't know what he's talking about. But someone like Darwin, they're like, who the fuck is this kid? I'm gonna like, he's definitely wrong. What does he know about Melee? Even if he's like actually a really solid player. So I think one of the things that I found really funny that, sort of echoing what you're saying about like, would people even notice? Because I think like if Walt did that, people would notice. But at a certain point, like the more Walt commentates, the more people might just be like, well, it's Walt. Why would he be lying?
Reputation like allows for mistakes, which is kind of
exactly.
like a weird double-edged sword almost. Like I almost don't like that that's a thing, because it kind of doesn't allow for new people to break in to the so-called market of commentary or creating content or doing anything, right? And then you get kind of like, then there's whole gatekeeping discussions and all that stuff, which we don't have to get into, but yeah,
but
that,
I think there are ways around it. Like when I first started making videos and I would say something like, hey guys, this is a good technique, I would intentionally use clips where pro players would do the technique as a way of saying, look, I'm just some fucking random guy, but here is something you can see.
Yeah, empirical evidence that
so it's probably good if you keep seeing it over and over again.
Yeah.
And people who watch my videos might notice that nowadays when I say, hey guys, this thing is good, I just record clips of myself doing it. Because I think at a certain point, I can just sort of get away with being like, hey, I just know what I'm talking about here. But at the beginning, I did kind of do that. And so I think there's some like ways around it. And like, it doesn't like, that's why I think it's a tricky dance. But yeah, really kind of stuck the landing there,
Yeah, Zet says like times where Scar and like Y commentator do the same commentary block, but everyone talks about Scar. It's like, yeah, that's a thing. I mean, that's something that just comes with the territory of becoming popular, I think. It's kind of, I don't know. It's like a tough line to toe, because there are very talented and I know the topic right now is casters right now, or like content creators. So there are very talented people in both of those areas in Melee that maybe get underappreciated because the reputation isn't quite there yet. So that's like it's something that it's, again, Darwin had worded it to me as kind of like exposure therapy, and that kind of makes me feel a little weird also, because it's like you shouldn't have to subject yourself to like a bunch of shit in order to break through the other side, a better, more popular person, bigger number. But that's just, I don't know, maybe that's just how it is.
I and maybe this is controversial. I fundamentally believe what.
Sorry, Zets was clarifying something in that other message, and yeah, noted.
So I fundamentally believe, and maybe this comes off as conceited, and maybe this comes off as like, I don't know. I think Walt and our biggest challenge right now as commentators is just breaking that parasocial barrier, and it's not improving to the next level, even though both of us want to continue to improve, and I think both of us have continued to improve. Mm-hmm. I think the way to because we did a bunch of commentary recently, and I saw on YouTube that we got pretty good feedback from it for people who don't know us. But a big thing that I've noticed shifting with our commentary is we are starting to get some people who are familiar with us, and those people will say like, oh, it's Walt and Radar commentary. And then other people who don't know us will go like, oh, who are these guys? And they'll be like, you don't know Walt and Radar? And then slowly it's like you have some level of credibility. Yeah. And I completely agree with Slime that like, if you are just some random person, not only do you have to be good, but you have to be like better than what they're almost wanting. Yeah, better than their expectations, but almost like because of this parasocial thing going on. And I the way I described it on Twitter was like, I see when you watch like Melee tournament, you're watching Big House or something, you expect Scar and Toph to be there because they're like your buddies, you know, they're your Melee buddies. They hang out, they're there at, you know, the top eights of every major, and that's just what you're used to. And so when they're not there, it's like you invited someone else to your dinner table and you're
Yeah,
like, who the fuck is
exactly.
this? And so that guest has to be the single most interesting person you've ever had at your dinner table to be like, well, you know what? It wasn't so bad that they came to dinner because it was really good anyway. And so overcoming that barrier is really, really hard. But I think that's just like life. I think it is a challenge as a creator, both with and a challenge as a commentator, but it is just a natural challenge. You have to sort of become known, and it's as much of like your work's quality as it is like establishing that reputation, I guess.
Yeah. I think what Vancity says is like pretty much hitting the nail on the head. It's really tough to break into the Smash community without rep from established figures. It's so weird because, you know, like for my perspective, maybe you feel this way also, is I feel like a big reason one we landed the things that we did is maybe it's also because we were, you know, willing to put ourselves out there, and that certainly has a factor in it as well. But I think that the reputation of building up a brand on YouTube, like for me, is what got my foot in the door for that. And it was like, that was years of making videos, and now I get to commentate pools. Like, this is so great, you know. But it's crazy to think that that's what it took to get there. And it's not the same for everybody, you know. It kind of goes back to the it's who you know and over what you know, whatever, and then you kind of build the what over time and get better at developing those skills. But it's just weird to think about. Adam Kara says the whole point is entertainment at the end of it. Yeah, it is. So
Yeah, like I do think, you know, for example, in my case, I did commentate pools prior to having a YouTube channel.
mm-hmm.
And the way I did that was like being a well-known enough player in my local scene and then commentating some events and being in a region that had big tournaments. So, you know, I could commentate things. And then when I moved to BC, I like messaged people and said, hey, I used to commentate this tournament, this tournament, this tournament. Can I commentate this? But where things got a lot bigger was being able to say like, oh, I also do this other stuff. And I think both Walt and I, like, we still benefit from this, especially Walt, because he's more well known. That like if we go in on commentary, they're like, is that turned down for Walt, I hear? Like, you know, because his voice is very recognizable. And that does help. But I think now is a good time to segue into the call segment. We're going to be here all day if we don't. So I don't know. This is our first time doing it, so hopefully.
Yeah, we'll play it by ear. So I'm gonna have some people pull in. So I believe Ventus is in. He can do mic checks for. Let's just go down the line. Um, so we'll start with. I'm seeing some people in the chat, and of course, guys, if you want to be a part of this as well, we'll run this segment for a little while, and then I think pending like kind of viewership and how this is received, we can do this as a more full segment moving forward as well, because this can kind of perceivably go on forever. This is what Radio Melee does as well. But we'll have Ventus pull some people in just to mic check, make sure everything sounds good, and we'll get the thumbs up from him and pull in right now. While we wait, big thank yous to a bunch of people. Jaden, again, thank you for the sub as well. Lots of follows tonight, guys, too. Stevie Wonder Coon, Jojo, the absolute fucking legend, man. Oh my god. Yeah. Smooth22, Smasher Magazine, Bone Reaper, Sweeze, Jamie Cal, Nate Gallagher, Ventus with the sub, Bear Day, and Griffin678, no other name was available, and Jeffy Bob. Big follows. So thank you guys a lot. You and Vino made a dream team commentary team. Dude, Vino was so good, man. Holy crap. And like I've heard his casting before. Like he's very smart, so it's cool pairing someone who can kind of like, you know, like me and Radar. I think Radar does a really good job at kind of like breaking down certain interactions on the fly. So it really was super cool to team up with him.
Should we start the first call, by the way? Just in the interest of time.
Yes.
Do we have someone lined up? Is it
Yeah, so
Speedy?
I know Speedy's upset, but it looks like Zetz is going to be our first one in here. We're going to pull him in right now, and then Speedy
All right.
will be our next one in. So we'll have Speedy go in for mic check once we're good. But here comes Zetz. Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Welcome to the call-in Happy Gaming Mixup listener.
big gamer moment.
What's up, Zetz? What's your question for us tonight?
Oh man, am I your guys' first caller?
You
Is
are.
this history in the making?
You've
Oh my
made it
God.
here. Can you make a TikTok about it for us?
Yeah. I'll definitely. I'll see what I can do. Okay, so my question. Thank you guys for having me on. Long time listener, first time caller. Blah blah blah. So my local scene. I played my one buddy recently in bracket. It came down to game 3, really close. But it was Transformation Stadium. He's a newer player.
Cool.
I'm old as heck, obviously. Maybe not obviously to everybody here, but I ended up winning largely because he kept approaching me on the transformations, and I've been around a long time. I know how to play around them. He wasn't very happy. It sparked this debate in our local scene as to whether we should try to mod all of our Wiis at this venue to have, Frozen Stadium. Should FD be a counter pick? We're talking about all these rule sets and stuff, and kind of debating it. I'm just wondering to you guys, what do you guys think of the current rule set as it is? Like the standard one that we're seeing at these online majors and soon to be in-person majors, and what changes, if any, would you guys be making if you could be making changes?
Do you want me to go first, Walt?
Sure. Yeah.
So, I think my thought is that, well, first of all, Stadium with transformations kind of sucks, and I think there's some level of like wanting to be consistent with what people experience on Slippy now. But even beyond that, I'm kind of just a big believer in like changing things up for the sake of changing it, not with like not going crazy. We're not going to put on like a Brinstar over here, but like if we, for example, want to have a 7-minute timer or a 6-minute timer, like sure, go ahead, try it. If we want to do Frozen Stadium or and have it be a neutral stage, like sure, go ahead. I think those kinds of things would be my answers of like, okay, a Frozen Stadium change is cool. I think FD being banned is not something that I really want, but I'd be fine with experimenting because it's kind of a very polarizing stage. I'd be fine with changing timer. I'd be fine with adding custom stages even, I think could be fun. That's a whole other thing, but like what?
No, yes. Keep going. You're pressing all the right buttons, Radar.
Don't stop.
It's basically like I think the point for me, the answer is just I want to treat it like the scientific method, man. I want to like go in and have like not just one tourney or 2 tourneys, but a couple tourneys where we go like, okay, what's a 6-minute timer look like? And then just have, because so many things in Melee are like theoretical debates about like, can you imagine if we were to ban this thing or what if, and it's like, it's a video essay. It gives content for like Walt and I or whatever, but at a certain point it's like, holy crap, can we just do this and see, and then just do it again and see? And if it's not an issue, we can just change it. And then if it is an issue, we can just change it back.
Yes. Okay. So, first things first, Transformation Stadium has got to go. The time has come. The days are numbered here, and like it needs to go at this point. Like we've lived with Frozen Stadium for over a year through online. To go back to that one is kind of like, why? I don't really understand. If someone has a reason, I'm happy to hear it, but it's kind of like this is our life now. Like this is what we do, and Stadium is frozen. Something that I find very interesting along the laundry list that Radar had listed out for this is the idea of changing timers, because I know like Royal Flush did it that one time, Flash in the Pan. They did 7-minute timer. Everyone was like up in arms about it, and then it turns out it didn't really matter at all. Interestingly enough, at the nightclub yesterday, the rule set also had a 7-minute timer for that event, and there was actually a bit of an interesting mishap where I don't know at what point in bracket it happened, but everyone just changed it to 8 minutes on the stream setup, and no one ever changed it back. And I had brought it up a couple times, and I was like, change it back to 7 minutes, like, you fucking cheaters, like, what the hell? And then like people in chat were just like, no one cares about the timer. And I was like, yeah, I don't really care about the timer either. But there was a set before winter semis So this was for 9th, I think. It was winner's side, but it was for top 8 winner's side. It was Swooper versus Warmer, and they had actually accidentally set the timer to 8 minutes, and in one of their sets, the game ended with under a minute left on the clock. So I was like, theoretically, by the rule set, this should have been a timeout, which means like there's a lot of hypotheticals that we could have gone through in that situation. But people in chat were kind of chiming in and saying like, yeah, Swooper would have played much differently if, or Warmer would have played much differently for that matter, if either of them saw that it was going to time, as opposed to the game ending at 52 seconds or whatever it was, because it was set to 8 minutes. It's niche in situations like that where it will go to time. I think as a whole on the competitive landscape, changing timer to 7 minutes is worth experimenting with, at least, and kind of seeing if someone can pull some data and say that this is like intrinsically bad for the game, which I don't think we would find data that points in that direction. So that's something that I'm super interested in learning more about. And I think a set like Swooper Warmer, where it's kind of like, yeah, it was supposed to be 7 minutes, but they played on 8, and they actually played for over the allotted time by the rule set. That opens a pretty interesting discussion in my eyes. And then the last thing is the custom stages. And I know Vancity will be joining us later in the show as well, and he has some stuff to say. But
super shout outs. He's incredible.
There's so much untapped potential when it comes to things like that. And custom stages is just like the tip of the iceberg, where you can run specific events, like you can have branding that's centered around your stages. There's so much, and this doesn't even particularly answer the idea of how this affects things competitively, because there's a lot. And I know we did that whole episode with IBDW and Junebug on kind of like running through all those custom stages. But I think if we wanted to expand the scope of competitive Melee, there's a lot of ways to do it. So I don't know, that's my piece.
I think, and I said this already, but the biggest thing I want to stress too is like, because I feel this way about political stuff, and I'm not going to make this political, but like people will constantly talk about what theoretically will happen. And it's like, why? It's Melee, man. We could just do it. Like we could just do it. And it would, and they're like, but if you lower the timer, theoretically, you'll get even more timeouts because of this. And it's like, so then just test it. It's like this, like, what the fuck? It only needs to be one tournament. The only tournament we have is fucking Royal Flush. And then everyone's like, well, nothing really happened there. And it's like, maybe that's what's happening, like what will happen, or maybe there is a big difference. Like, yeah, we got to keep doing it to figure out.
Even to that point too, and we'll call it at this point, but like the idea that we can just run an online tournament to test all this shit out now is like free real estate, right? Like if the issue was, okay, what tournament are we going to put at risk to try all these things out, just do it in an online event where people apparently don't give a shit anyway, and then see what happens. And then you can pivot that into LAN, run your tests there as well, but you have at least some form of data going off of a backlog of online events. So
no, for sure. So I think that does answer the question. Like you said, we want to be in the interest of time, but thank you, Zets, for coming on, and thank you for giving us such a good question. And we, hope to hear more from you soon. I think both on TikTok and, wherever else we could find you, man. So
appreciate it, guys. Yeah, have a good rest of your stream.
Thanks a lot, Zets. Feel free to link your stuff in the chat as well for the people who are foolishly
or I'll link it because
on TikTok.
Can VIPs link?
I don't know.
I'll link it. Anyway, let's move on to our next.
Thank you, guys, man. See
you later.
All right. Oh, next caller is the Speedy Sloth. How is it going, sir? Happy to have you. And what's your question? Welcome to the Mixup.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Before I ask my question, I just want to point out that of all the people that posted questions in the call-in chat, Zets was literally the last one to do so. So okay, going in first. No. It's top commentator privilege.
Listen,
okay?
I said let's do it in order, and Ventus pulled Zets, so that's not my problem.
All right. So my question is very broad, but who is the GOAT, and does Summit's result change your opinion on that? And I want to hear you guys go first.
I think it's Mango, personally.
Okay.
I think that fuck, I don't. Someone else go. Actually, shit, I gotta think
Radar.
about this.
Radar.
So, I don't have a very concrete answer, in terms of who it is right now. My guess is it's probably still Armada, but the thing is it is literally like the sands in the hourglass of Armada being the GOAT. Every day get, it's like depleted. Every single day, Mango becomes closer and closer to being the solidified GOAT as long as he keeps playing. And it's been that way ever since Armada retired. And some people really weirdly will be like, yeah, but Armada's not playing. So like, we can't, we just have to look at his accomplishments and then compare him to Mango's. And it's like, no, that's the whole point. Like if Armada is not playing and Mango's still out here winning events and still like being a top player and all this shit, like he is building a legacy. So I think Mango being the GOAT is inevitable until someone else until and if someone else eclipses him. So right now he may or may not be, but he will be someday. If not, like he already is.
Okay, that's interesting, and that's kind of actually the response I want. Walt, do you want to?
Yes. So okay, I think Radar articulated one of my thoughts here. So the question that makes this like muddy is that we're comparing Mango's longevity to Armada's consistency, and I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think, God, like it's such a hard question still, even now. Like I do think it's Mango for me. And like you kind of think about the stats of like, again, this goes more into the longevity side of things, but it's like Mango is the youngest person to ever win a tournament and the oldest person to ever win a tournament. There's no one else who will ever have that stat, really, for the foreseeable future. But
well, I also want to add that, like, even when you talk about consistency, he has consistency in earlier years. He just doesn't have it in like the 16, 17, 18, 15. Like he, 2009, 10, 11, like, really, really consistent player. Really, really dominant. I'm not saying that that's equal to this era, but like, I think there's arguments even for him on it, like not necessarily on a consistency level because Armada in his peak was more consistent at a more competitive level, on a more competitive era, but still, like, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Shin the Min says it's basically LeBron versus Jordan. It's kind of like, Mango's been out here doing it for a while. Armada has had his time as well, and it's like when you look at his records, kind of empirically, like I have the whole Pound 3.9 video that discusses this. It's like he's only lost to literally, you can count on one hand, players in best of 5 sets who are not in the top 6. Incredible consistency, immaculate. Yeah, very, very good, very incredible stat to have. But I think the idea of like still being around and like playing in the game shouldn't be overlooked either. It's kind of like, Mango's still out here doing this stuff. Yeah, he's taken bad losses in his time, and like so have most people. Armada is just freakishly good. But I don't know. To me, it's just the idea that he's still out here performing just as well as he has many, many years ago. Over 10 years in the making is what really kind of sells it for me, I think.
Okay. Also, I just do want to add, like, Jamie Cal in the chat saying, I want to see him be number 1 over the course of a year before calling him the GOAT personally. I think that doesn't matter. I don't think that he has to be number 1 for a year for that to make him better. If he's still like number 2, number 3, because like every year he is still consistently putting up results and not falling off. Like Mango has basically been top 5 for like a decade. So like, that's the thing is like, I do think being number 1 is very important. I think winning tournaments is important. But the idea that like the only way he could become GOAT is if he has a year of number 1, like being number 2 for multiple years is still insane.
That's
like if Armada's already retired. Yeah. Like it's like, fuck. I would say he was firmly number 2 in 2020. Like very clearly number 2 in 2020. So even now, I think he probably has an argument for being number 20, like number 2. And we're almost, a good chunk of the way through the year. We're in the 8th month, right? So,
All right, what's your thoughts on this?
this is literally the perfect response because this is what I thought. I thought Radar was going to, I guess you could say you're leaning more Armada, but Walt is leaning more Mango. Either way, that's what I wanted because if you guys have seen like Clayton Crowley's video, it's about the GOAT of basketball, and he says there's way more. And that's what I think. I think, to be honest, like Ken doesn't really have an argument.
Oh my
No
God.
way.
yeah.
Yeah, no way.
NTK,
No way. I'm
Get that
no.
shit
Yeah,
outta here, man.
yeah,
Like,
no.
Greatest Survivor player of all time.
HBox fucking does. HBox is the fucking GOAT. And I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna tell you guys why. Because no. Because this is what it's about. When you think about the most competitive era of Melee, right? Not talking about fucking online and then one tournament after, okay? You're talking about fucking offline competitive era Melee, 2017 to 2019. Dude, literally 3 years the most competitive Melee, he was on top. And before that, he was top 5 for all of that. You think of you want to say like Mango is longevity, Armada is consistency. You put that together, you get HBox. He's literally the best of both worlds.
Yeah, you kind of skamazed us, dude. Like, I thought you said who was the GOAT, Mango or Armada, but I guess you only asked who was the GOAT. That was tricky.
Yep. I can go into more stuff.
I think there's a totally fair argument for that too. I think that, I don't know, like I guess the discussion's just been centered around Mango and Armada for so long that that's kind of where all of our heads are at when that question comes up.
No, it's because this happens in every sport because people don't like the lame players, you know, like whether it's the 89 whether it's the bad boy Pistons or the Patriots or the Yankees or whatever, people don't like it talk about them because no one likes them. And it's the same thing with HBox, and that's fine, but you have to admit that he is the greatest player of all time. You talk about peak, you talk about consistency, no one talks about quantity. He has the most top 8s of literally any player.
That's not true.
Yes, he does.
Are you positive? Like, where
I counted this myself. According to what I consider a major, and this is I did this research for a video. According to what I considered a major, he is the most top 8s of any player. He is the most major wins of any player. He has obviously the most time being on number 1 on the SSBM rank. He is fucking peak consistency, quality, all of that shit. You want MJ, you want Kareem, you want fucking LeBron, all of that into one player. You're talking about Harry Poggers. You know what? Maybe Harry Poggers is the GOAT too.
Tyler Swift is the GOAT then, if that's the case.
Yes, agree. I can hard agree with that.
I think we're all the GOAT at the end of the day, but I appreciate that answer a lot, and thank you for tuning in with us on the Mix-Up. Hopefully we'll get you in on another call in the future. But yes. I know I got some thinking to do about this after that one. But thank you again for the call. We're going to pull in our next guy and keep this train going along. Have a good one, man.
Oh, okay. See ya.
I will say that people who discount HBox's achievements are whack as fuck, by the way. We'll close on that.
Yes,
the people who act like, people will be like, HBox? What? And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He's like so clearly one of the best players ever. So definitely.
Yeah. So we're gonna bring our next guy in. This is gonna be John. John, how are you doing today? Welcome to the Mix-Up. Thank you for calling in. And what question you got for us?
Hey, what's up, guys? Glad to be here. So today, I was wondering, because I was watching Summit 11 from the comfort of my rocking chair at home, and I thought I knew the whole atmosphere was pretty hype, but I was expecting people to describe it as one of the greatest final sets ever. So with that in mind, I'm wondering because I think peak concurrent viewers was 100K plus when you take into account Ludwig's viewers.
Okay.
So do you think that Riptide, which I think is going to be the next major tournament, do you think Riptide's going to be able to live up to that kind of hype, or do you think Summit was kind of lightning in a bottle?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that as well. So for me, like there will never be, I hope, I certainly hope there will never be another tournament that is the first tournament after a global pandemic, back in person. I certainly hope that is a true statement, but there was something like very special about Summit 11, even though it was an invitational, 16 people, whatever. With that said, every tournament so far, whether it's Riptide, whether it's Genesis, whether it's Main Stage, is absolutely ripping right now. Just completely firing on all cylinders. Genesis posted a stat today that their pre-reg is already 2,000 members, whereas their last pre-reg for Genesis 6 in 2019 was at 500 before their pre-reg ended. Like, that is an insane statistic to think about. With the idea of storylines, though, and like kind of the quote-unquote, if you were going to put this in like a documentary title, for instance, it would be, the first tournament back from pandemic, and there's something that's just inherently special about that, and I don't personally think other events following it will capture that same magic. That isn't to say that they're not going to perform well. I think they're going to outperform events in 2019 just by the way that the numbers are shaking up right now. But again, something about this event, the level of stakes that went into it, the history of turning this into the largest prize pool event in the first LAN back from this tragic pandemic that we were going through. Again, hopefully there's never anything like that again.
Yeah, I do think it's worth mentioning that those numbers we have beaten at other events multiple times, right? We've had better numbers at Evo, we've had better numbers at Genesis, we've had better numbers at like just a ton of other events. Historically, we just more recently maybe haven't had those numbers. So I think Riptide will struggle to eclipse Summit, just by longevity, the kind of brand, everything like that. But I actually hope that we can kind of push, look at the numbers of Smash Summit and push even higher, because I remember a time where we would have like 200,000 people watching, and I think there's potential for that to happen again. I don't want to say that I know all the ways to do that. I don't think I do, but like I'd love to see things kind of keep pushing. Number stuff is tricky though, because it's like yeah, having like a Ludwig to help out added a lot of eyes, I'm sure, but also like how many eyes did it take away? How many would have been watching the Summit feed? I don't mean take it away in the sense of actually taking away from the eyes. We had 50K or so on the Summit stream, or 50 to 60, and then like another 40 or 50 on Ludwig's. How many of those Ludwig guys were new, and how many of them were just like choosing to watch Ludwig? Like, do you know what I mean? Like for the next event, will we only have 50K again, or will we, like, if it was the same? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential overall, and the Ludwig idea kind of brings us back to the earlier discussion on like that content funnel and like commentary, bringing new people in, because Ludwig is at like the tippy top of that. He's the person that helps bring all these folks into the game. If we have ability to do that moving into other events, the sky's the limit, I think. And I truly do think all these events are going to be phenomenal. It's just like, to me, the magic of Summit 11. I think it's exactly like you said, John. It's like it was lightning in a bottle, where all these amazing things lined up really perfectly and turned into this super wonderful remembered event.
Right. Yeah.
Great
And,
poetic word choice there. So
yeah. And yeah, I think the future of Melee is bright, because when you brought up Ludwig, like I had a friend who had like no interest in competitive Smash, but he saw Ludwig just because he was on the front page, and he was like restreaming the event, and he got into it at the right time. It was like the grand final set, and like just bought into the hype, and now he's a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much potential for people to get into Melee, whether it's through the memes like we have a Ludwig, or just by virtue of all of these events coming back into complete full force, like absolute insane numbers overall. So it's really exciting. Yep. It's a super exciting time to be into Melee, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
but yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll get some more questions from you next time, and keep tuning in the future.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, John. All right, 2 to go, and then we will wrap this one up. So coming up next is Vancity Primal, the legend himself. And we got Vancity in the call right now. How are you doing today? The skin, stage skin, character skin, just
the legend
customs
himself.
master.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on. I think for a lot of people, this is the first time ever like hearing me or like knowing who I am behind
That's
the
true.
scenes. So
Yep.
thanks for having me. Just want to say, thanks so much for giving me shout outs and all this stuff. It's great to hear you guys, talk about it. And like I said, these mods are kind of helping me step out, which I'm super stoked about.
Absolutely.
So the question I had for you guys. Obviously, during the online era, I had some success. GMO Summer, the big one, the Octagon. But do you think now that we go back into person, does that all go away? Do you think, or like, I think a few of the hangups people had was like desyncs, which thankfully I've been able to like sidestep. But then the shadow of Nintendo, like these online tournaments, there's stakes are pretty low for the TOs, but the in-persons they have a little bit more to gamble. So, what do you guys think?
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. You have any thoughts, Radar?
So I do think themed skins are viable. It's to what degree are they viable, or like how themed are we talking here? Is worded. So for example, like I think so that a while back when the Smash World Tour was first announced, pre-COVID, when that was kind of talked about, Ginger and Blur got on a call, and Ginger said, "Couldn't we just do Frozen Stadium? Would they notice?" And Blur pushed back and said, "Of course they would notice. Of course they would notice." And I think about that sometimes. Like, would they actually? Like, I don't know. Like, it obviously is clear if you play the game and the transformations don't happen, but like, it has to sort of be maybe pointed out to you. So similarly, like if you have I'm trying to think of a good example, like some of the more subtle mods, that can kind of be not the biggest deal, but then something as elaborate and cool as the GMO stuff, that like the summer kind of melee skin that you made, that gets a little bit trickier. And I do worry about like because no one looks at that and goes, "Where's Peach's dress?" You know what I mean? Like, or like is Marth got a pool noodle? Like, there's no ambiguity there. So it is tricky. I would like to see it. Really, what I would love to see, and I know this is, it's like, do I even really want this? But like, Nintendo should just be picking this up, and they should be hiring someone like you, and they should be monetizing it, and just you pay to get these custom skins. Like, it would just make this whole thing so much easier. I feel like if I was a player who was online or whatever, and I would was playing Melee, and I could buy the like
microtransactions. Come on.
So I'm saying, like, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And I do think Nintendo stuff, it's like, it's better to be pessimistic because they fucking suck. But I do honestly wonder, like, at what point will they just be like, okay, like, I don't know, like, because it just doesn't seem like they have an ability to truly win. So I don't know. I think we always are dancing that line of like what's allowed and not allowed.
Yeah. So my take on this whole thing is that like it's a similar thing, and I've brought this up on Mixup episodes. I've gone to bat for people like you, Paul, many a time. I think of there is so much money that can go into this, like as a market, that it is disgusting that how limited it is from like the corporate side. I think an interesting workaround to this might be, and this is like very next level. I don't think a lot of lands would really even have bandwidth to do this in present year, but by the same way that players are able to individually cast their runs through some of these online events. So like, let's take a GMO again for an example. We'd have the Gallant Gaming and BTS Smash streams as the main events, which have your casters, they have like your overlays and fancy talent. But if you want to see IBDW's run through that event, you can go to IBDW's stream where he's rocking all these other cool skins and looks and appearances. Maybe there's an avenue for that if you have individual player runs. Exactly how to set up, player streams at a LAN event is an entirely different can of worms to get into. But I think it's challenging, man. Like that's the harsh reality of it to me is the last thing we want is for Nintendo to just turn this all off again. Especially when we look at with Big House 9 situation or Big House 10 situation. I think a lot of TOs are going to go into these LAN events a bit wary and play it a bit more conservative on, there are things that we can kind of do that are falling under the radar, whether it's like the frozen stadiums of the world or when we had Duinos or UCF, things that kind of like are mechanical and not as noticeable to the everyman in Melee or the evil Nintendo watchers. But it's such a tough situation to be in. I think online you're thriving for sure, but LANs are going to get a little bit dicey. It's hard to know for sure, and I don't know a lot of people who are going to take risks for that.
I totally agree. Unfortunately, that's what I'm thinking too. It might be relegated to the Slippy era or like Slippy tournaments that may continue. Like those might get more. I've definitely always seen it like these mods are like we the community, like it's our game now, like
Yeah.
we take ownership, we do it our way kind of thing. But in person when there's higher stakes and money on the line and stuff.
Yeah,
But could there still be value in like it's on the setups and stuff, and like there's making that like it doesn't have to be something as elaborate as the Beach Dreamland, but something that's like, oh, there's the the GOML logo at Get On My Level events, and when every TV has them, and it just like helps them sort of solidify their branding. And even if it's maybe not stream facing, it's event facing, like there might still be some value there that could be really cool and make people feel like, wow, this is a special event. I have special skins and, that kind of thing. Like that, it doesn't necessarily have to be right. It's still public, but it's like seen by 2,000 people or something rather
For sure.
than.
Yeah.
Also, worth mentioning, this is something I think is really important that Nintendo or that Smash unfortunately suffers from, is that when you have all these collections of different intellectual property, different companies are going to have different like standards. Like I think everyone's heard the stories about how like Sonic has to be blue, like that's just what Sega wants in Ultimate, and so the alternate skins like still kind of look similar. I think there's going to be challenges where like if you customize Marth or something, maybe the Fire Emblem people are like, no big deal. But if you make Pikachu have a different hat, Game Freak comes at Nintendo and says, what the hell is this? Like, and so it's not just Nintendo that's ready to throw hands. Like,
and
unfortunately,
definitely shout outs to Bucket Hat.
So sick.
While we're on the subject.
No, I think we can turn this into like a much deeper dive. I think we loosely talked about this when it came to maybe the episode with Blur on it, but it's super weird to me when it like thinking about the IP situation and copyright law of it all, where it's like these are aesthetic changes that don't change like what for my career. It's like we talk about working on dental implants, let's say, and it's like the form, fit, and function of the implant remains exactly the same. It's just that we're changing this product aesthetically, so we don't have any like IP issues, I think, when it comes to that. And I feel like there's a world where there's a similar argument to be made. I don't want to like derail this into some spiraling conversation, but I don't know. I think there's more of a discussion to be had when it comes to that. And I like when it comes to your position, Paul, I don't think it's like the end of the road for you, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a tough situation to be in for sure. I think especially if you're a TO who's concerned about kind of the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. I'm not worried about mods dying out or people not wanting them because people will always play online together. But the tournament overlap, I think, was new during Slippy, and I just don't know which way it's going to go now that we're going back, but we still have Slippy in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Any last thoughts on that, Radar? Or...
I hope that it goes the way of supporting this stuff because I think what you do is very cool. I think, and this is maybe shit talking some of the mods we have seen in the past, but some of them, like the stuff we used to see in terms of custom work, was really ugly, or it'd be like really, really like mismatched and weird. And I feel like there's been an elevation and a polish from the stuff we've been seeing lately, and not just from yourself. So I really do hope we see it moving forward because I think it is it makes for cool trailers. Like that's another thing that like maybe we'll end up seeing that be a thing where people want custom stuff and they want to use it in game. Like there's so much potential for it even outside of the tournament facing stuff. But I really hope they figure out a way to include it because I definitely enjoy it. And it like when we commentate it, we look at the chat, people go like, "Whoa, Marth Pool Noodle, what the hell is this?" So
I
it gets
hear
people
cursed
talking.
so much. Everything's cursed.
Oh no.
But
so funny.
shoutouts to Golden Guardians for funding some of this. Like Octagon 2 was hype as hell to have like sponsorship money to make mods. And
Mhm.
same with Gallant for Kevin Deere for just letting me do that. And that was one of the first ones that was kind of like a tournament that was different, that opened the door for me. So
Yeah, I think it can only go up from here, but yeah, we should make this a bit of a longer discussion for the next time. But again, yeah, Vancity, thank you for joining us on the show, and hopefully we'll hear from you again very, very soon.
for sure, thanks for having me on, guys.
Have a good one, man.
See ya.
See ya.
And then last but not least, guys, that we're gonna have the guy who is helping out with all the mic checks here. Ventus Official has a question for us, and we're gonna just do it live because I can't check his mic right now. So here he is, the legend himself. How's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing well. What you got for us?
All right. So my question is, how did you two build up synergy as co-casters slash co-commentators? Because as a fan of watching you guys, and I've seen both in the mix-up and just through you casting from like the first things you've casted to current day, I've definitely noticed, and I've talked to Walt about this like separately. Um, but I feel like you guys are just like you guys flow really, really well together. And I think that even if you look at like the first mix-up episode, it's not that you guys didn't flow together, but there's definitely some like major improvement on just like the synergy overall. And I was wondering if there's anything you guys do intentionally. Do you debrief? Do you think that doing the mix up and casting together has just kind of naturally made you guys, I don't know, more familiar or more like understand how each other works together? Because like when I see you guys co-cast now, I'm just like it just seems very synergetic. And I'm just wondering how much of that is intentional work between you two and how much of it is just like, oh, well, we're doing the mix up and we're co-casting all the time and it's just kind of come naturally.
Do you want to hit this one first, or should I? I have some thoughts.
Yeah, I'll start, and then we can kind of figure out what else to go from there. I honestly think like me and Radar are just like good friends now at this point, and that's like a really big factor when it comes to this. It's the same as like how Pew Pew says, it's better to, bros before pros. It's better to team with like your bro and share that victory together with someone that you're like close with than just like teaming with a good player. I think the same rings true for casting and anything for that matter. It doesn't even have to be in the sphere of Melee, but just working on all of these things together and collaboratively, you just kind of inherently build chemistry over time. And then you kind of figure out like quirks, things that both of you can improve on, this, that, and the other thing. I think that the fact that the two of us dabble in content creation as well plays a big factor. So there's some degree of comfort when it comes to public speaking, appearing on camera, working with other folks, what have you. Both of those things are very, I think, pretty big factors when it comes to kind of the synergy that you might be seeing for Melee commentary. And then just the idea, like, I think both of us are pretty like growth oriented as well. So like we've talked at the end of stuff, like even the mix up where we'll just be like, yeah, that was a good episode. what are we gonna do next? Kind of like the ice room, figure out like where can we, not necessarily what we did wrong. I think it's more so just like praising and like, you know, encouraging positively, and then like letting that build on itself over time.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of sort of echo a lot of that. I think for me, I agree that like I think there's a lot more like natural chemistry and stuff, and that has come from like both getting to know Walt better, commentating with Walt a lot. Like worth mentioning, I commentated with Toph and I commentated with Walt and I commentated with Nathan Sandwich
Mm-hmm.
during this tournament, and I definitely found it easier to commentate with Walt than Toph, and I actually found it kind of hard to commentate with Toph, despite him being such an established commentator, because the rhythm, trying to figure out like where things kind of like when you talk and don't talk. And I noticed afterwards when we did top 8, Walt and I, that it was like, oh, okay, like I know when Walt wants to talk, and I'm used to like how we're setting each other up. And I think the fun thing about it is that like I actually consciously have been going back and sometimes watching sets and seeing what I'm doing right and wrong. But I think it really is, and so that has helped me go like, okay, in this situation, I should try to throw a bit better. Like there's some things where it's like I'll recognize what I think I need to do differently. And then by doing that, that will like help. It will create like a chemistry that is there, almost like if I understand like, oh, sometimes I'm shutting Walt down here, so then if I just don't do that, it's like, wow, look at the flow, it's so good, and it's because I'm recognizing how I'm affecting his commentary in a negative or positive way. So there is some like conscious sort of craftsmanship on at least my end. Walt could just be a natural, but like definitely I'm trying to like look for certain things. But then the other thing is just, yeah, like I'm used to casting with Walt. We're starting to sort of push into certain roles a bit more, and I think some of it is just as simple as like doing it a lot and wanting to get better at it, and like, yeah, talking a bit about like, okay, what do you think went well? But yeah, I don't know, like is that a good answer, or if do you have any kind of like follow-up? Or
No, I thought that was a good answer. I do think it's funny because I didn't think about this too much. I definitely do think that also both being content creators kind of puts you in a similar lane, I guess, so to speak. And you both kind of do like I know Radar, you do a lot of analytical content, and Walt, you also do analytical content. So it's kind of like you also know that you can. I know Walt was talking about like the 60-40, where Walt is like 60% of the time he feels like he's doing play by play, 40% analysis. And that fluctuates, I'm sure, per set, per narrative, per tournament, based on what is needed out of you. So I assume that knowing that you can lean on the other person for whatever thing is probably comforting. But I don't know. I just found it really interesting. Because I think even in the mix-up episodes, as a viewer, there's just like a certain level of like comfortability that you guys have around each other that you kind of, as a fan, I've seen just over time build to a point where now it's like, oh, okay, like it's very evident to me like how the synergy, and I think it's super cool to see. I don't know.
Yeah, I think as like a closing thought to that too, it's, whether you're casting or you're, from like the professional standpoint, right? So whether you're casting an event, whether you're doing commentary with someone, whether you're hosting a show, like all these things that Raider and myself have done together, like the goal isn't to show the other person up or kind of like express your skill in a certain way. Like the goal is to create a rapport, and then by developing that relationship with your co-caster, co-host, what have you, the entertainment value and the knowledge and the engagement that your audience might have, whatever the size of that audience may be, just kind of comes naturally, in my opinion. But it starts with just like literally making a friend.
yeah, and I also want to add too, I think there's something about like by getting better independently, you become so much better. It becomes so much easier to like push each other up as well. Like it's one of those things that has like a positive momentum. Or like if Walt becomes a better commentator and I don't, I will still look better because Walt is better, and like vice versa. Like if we're handing off to each other better, smart commentators will say stuff like, Walt, what do you think of blank? And then like, they're recognizing moments where you're ready to go for something. So I feel like what has been so fun about it in a way is that like as we get better, it almost gets easier. And like even though I feel like it's actually still getting better, like it's not like it's not like it's easier and we're staying the same level. It's getting higher quality. Like it's kind of like, I think of it as a bit like having a dance partner or jamming with a musician or something, where like as you become a better musician, it becomes easier to play with other people. As you become a better dancer, you can kind of figure out the rhythm of what they're doing. And like, so it's been a fun thing because you like, it kind of feeds off each other in a very positive way.
Yeah, super well said.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. That was super insightful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ventus, and appreciate your help in setting up the waiting room with hanging out with all the people we were going to bring in for the calls. So we will certainly be hearing from you again soon.
Definitely.
Of course.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
Wait. Can I give some shout outs real quick?
Sure. Shout it out.
All right, so go to turndownforwalt.com, please. There, we like literally the new merch is
it's
super
so good,
sick.
man.
It is. You have no idea. All right, so that
so
came.
Good.
Oh, I have to shout it out. I'm not gonna. It's super sick. Like the galaxy wave thing. What is it? What do we call it? Like
the cosmos.
The cosmos
design.
Yeah, that's like the Project A version, I guess. The prototype name. Please check that out because it's underrated. So go buy merch and follow me on TikTok, Small Victories Project, if you want some daily mental health small victory montages. And Twitter, Ventus Official. But really, please go check out the merch. I'm gonna shout out the merch.
Yeah,
because it's underrated.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Anytime.
All right. We will talk to you soon.
Have a good
See you later, man.
Later, dude.
Peace.
All right. So with that concludes the segment, which, I said it was going to be pretty scuffed, but that went pretty well overall, I think. So I'm pretty excited to bring that back, either as kind of like a full radio style episode or kind of similar tune, because this is the way that we make Ask the Mixup happen, is by forcing people to talk.
It's one day, man. It's gonna work.
But yeah, I think with that we can wrap some things up. We will do some quick soul searching on the Super Smash Bros. Melee game channel to figure out who we would like to raid. If anyone in chat has any preferences as well, as we kind of have our closing thoughts or whatever, Radar, anything you want to wrap up with for the end of tonight?
Not really. I think we actually covered everything pretty well. I'm just actually looking, I'm sure you are, to find people to raid.
So there are two choices for me. I think we raid either Brandon, because he put in a lot of work for Rollback Rumble, and we should congratulate him on that, or Ringler, because Monkey.
I was thinking, should we do Bobby after like shitting on his tag?
True.
Like because I'm not trying to shit on it. Any one of those would be good. I think Brandon would definitely be good. So just take your pick, man. Like, all those guys would be a good option.
Yeah, let's get Brandon, because Aiden requested for Ringler the last time we were here, so we're gonna start the raid for him right now, guys. And as we begin to filter in here, just want to say, of course, thank you for tuning in to the guestless episode. I think we should do this more, so we're gonna do this more. Exactly when, I don't know. I think there's a world where we could do this every week, every other week, like we had originally planned. So we'll talk about it. We'll keep you guys posted. But everyone in chat, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who was able to call in as well, super appreciated, and hope we get much more of that moving into some future episodes as well. But with that, it's time for us to say farewell. Thank you guys for tuning into the Mix-Up, and we will be back with another episode very soon. Peace out.